Good morning. I'm Georgette Greenlee, the Secretary of the Board of Directors of the Chicago Transit Authority. The Committee on Human Resources meeting, which has been scheduled for 9 a.m. this morning, will be followed by the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery, which will be followed by the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget, which will then be followed by the regular board meeting of the Chicago Transit Authority, the Secretary of the Board, which is scheduled for 10 a.m. On May 4th, 2023, the Office of the Secretary issued a notice of changed format of meetings of committees on human resources, strategic planning and service delivery, and finance, audit, and budget, as well as the Chicago Transit Authority board meeting, which has been scheduled for today, May 10th, 2023. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there is currently in place a statewide disaster proclamation that has been renewed from month to month. Pursuant to Section 7E of the Illinois Open Meetings Act, virtual public meetings are permitted while the disaster proclamation remains in effect. Since the governor's disaster proclamation remains in effect in the state of Illinois, the meeting of May 10th, 2023 is being held, all the meetings are being held electronically or virtually for members of the public. At this point, we are ready to start the meeting of the Committee on Human Resources. Chairman Miller.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the May 10th meeting of the Committee on Human Resources. Georgette, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Director Jakes?
Here.
Director Ja?
Here.
Director Miller?
Here.
Chairman Miller, you have a quorum present with 3 members. Also present today is President Dorval Carter.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to review the approval of May 11, 2022 committee minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Miller, the minutes are approved as submitted.
Thank you. Next order of business is a CTA hiring update presentation. Tom McCone.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, directors. My name is Tom McCone. I'm Chief Administrative Officer at CTA, and I wanted to take the opportunity to give you an update on where we are with the hiring and workforce. And so I prepared a presentation to walk through and obviously available to answer questions at the end. So with that, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so 2023, 4 months in, is off to a strong start on the hiring front. So far, we've hired 304 bus operators in the first 4 months. I'm happy to report that that number is approaching 350 as we just had our first class start in the month of May earlier this week. For the first 4 months, this is actually 139 more than were hired during the equivalent period in 2019. So you can see that even compared to pre-pandemic, we have rapidly accelerated our hiring efforts across our positions and importantly in the bus operator position. In addition, we focused on some of the support positions that were experiencing some critical deficiencies. One of those was the bus mechanic position. So far this year, we've hired 42 bus mechanics. This is actually 8 more than were hired in all of 2022. So we're well on pace to return to pre-pandemic staffing levels and then exceed that as we look to fill the vacancies that we have in the mechanic position. Moving over to the rail side of the house, I'm happy to report that, oh, you can go back a slide. Okay, thank you. The first rail operator class graduated earlier this year in April. The second is set to graduate here at the start of June. These classes are actually the largest classes that we've ever held at CTA. We've increased capacity by 25% to increase throughput and to accelerate filling the positions of the rail operator vacancies that we have. So the second class is well underway, looking to graduate starting the week of June 3rd. The third class is also underway, and that class is set to complete at the end of July. And even as it's underway, we'll look to start the fourth class concurrently while that third class is running as well to continue to fill those rail operator vacancies. For our job fairs, we have so far hosted 5 job fairs ourselves. This is in addition to the dozens of job fairs where we've attended with others employers across our various communities. But for the 5 job fairs that we've hosted, we've had a cumulative attendance of just over 1,700. The first one that we had this year in January was our most popular, but even our most recent job fair, we had over attendees. So we continue to see strong interest in our positions. And importantly, the workforce is increasing. So our total workforce at the end of April stood at 9,864, and this is over 100 more employees than we had at the end of 2022. So our efforts to increase our workforce are working, right? Our hiring is exceeding our departures, and net we're increasing our workforce. Now I want to go into a few more details about what specifically we're doing and some of the next steps. So if you can go to the next page. These are some photos from the most recent hiring we had. This was on April 28th. You can see at the top, the event starts with a presentation. This presentation includes for the applicants, the steps that they'll need to take to fill out an application to complete the hiring process. Then it includes information from various parts of our agency about the different jobs and job opportunities, bus operator, bus mechanic. And at our most recent hiring event, we featured the rail flagger position, which is the entry point to becoming a rail operator. The union provides information, the support that they'll provide to the positions, and then we're available to answer questions from the applicants. From there, they go to the bottom left-hand side of the page where you'll see anybody who's interested in completing an application. We have an application workshop right on site. They can take 10 or 15 minutes, sit down with one of our iPads. We have staff available to help them complete the application as any questions might come up. From there, they go down the hallway and they can complete their assessment. So they complete the application, they can sit down and take the assessment. It takes from 60 to 90 minutes. We have a dedicated computer lab where folks can go ahead and complete their assessment. From there, they can proceed downstairs where they can talk specifically to CTA employees and CTA managers about the various positions. The picture that we have here is of our bus maintenance group speaking with prospective mechanics about the position and the opportunities that are available there. We have our bus operations group, our rail operations group is there to discuss their positions. In addition, we have our second chance program is available, available to answer questions about folks who may be interested in a second chance position. We also have support from the Veterans Resource Group to provide information about opportunities and support they offer at the CTA, along with the union tables to provide information about the support that it's offer employees while they're here as well. You can go to the next page. So all of this, we're measuring our progress against our 2023 hiring target. Meeting the moment scorecard, we have a target of hiring 700 bus operators by the end of the year. This is cumulative hires to date through the month of April. You can see that we are ahead, tracking ahead of our target. 700 operators would be more operators hired in 1 year than we ever have at the authority. And obviously we're not going to stop there. So if we do stay ahead of target and are able to maintain this pace, obviously we're going to continue to hire and hopefully exceed that target as well. But the good news is that these efforts have resulted in us staying, at and above the target for 2023. And our projections are that we're going to continue to stay there. Moving to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about what brought us to this point and then some of the next steps. So last year, taking feedback from applicants and the position and looking at the industry overall, we transitioned to directly hiring full-time bus operators. Transit agencies still maintain hiring of part-time operators before they become full-time operators, in which they work part-time for between 6 months to 2 years before they get the opportunity to transition to full-time positions. This was just not competitive. We were losing people that we had hired. People that were interested in working here said that they couldn't do it for a part-time job. So what we did is we transitioned to hiring directly full-time bus operators in 2022. As part of that, we transitioned our existing part-time workforce to full-time. That meant over 300 existing part-time operators, full-time operators. In addition, and in order to accelerate the hiring, we put in place a hiring incentive, a $1,000 hiring bonus went in place at the end of the year last year. So starting in November, for bus operators, bus and rail mechanics, we offer $1,000 for those who are successfully able to onboard with the authority. In addition, in recognizing the importance of retaining our existing employees, we put in place a 3% retention bonus, and this is for all of those frontline workers and also bus mechanics, so critical workers that we have to incentivize them to not only to reward them for the work that they're performing, but to continue to do that work with the authority. So We have a 3% retention bonus in place that went in place last year through the rest of this year. This is also available to new employees as well. So not only an incentive to come in the door, but also as a recognition for the work and the retention that, of our existing employees. And then at the bottom, recognizing that we want to make this an attractive position, we knew that we had to adjust the starting wage and accelerate the wage progression rate. So we eliminated the wage progression for bus mechanics, which led to an increase in the hourly rate. And we shortened the wage progression for bus operators, dropped it by about 15 months, which also led to an increase in the starting wage, which has also helped prompt interest in the position. These are amongst the most aggressive moves that we've seen within the industry. You can see the results, right? They've obviously paid dividends in terms of us being able to start to rebuild our workforce. You can go to the next page. So I want to give an overview of the process that we have for hiring bus operators. So starting at the first step, which is application, moving through assessment and interview. At the end of the interview, we do require that our applicants have a commercial learner's permit so that we can then grant a commercial driver's license in our training process to them. They do obtain this from the Secretary of State's office. This is available at their South Holland location, their Oak Grove Village location. Our applicants will go and they'll get their commercial learner's permit. We'll provide them with a written job offer at that point. They'll go through the federally mandated medical steps, and then we'll onboard them. And then the note says once onboarded, bus operators then begin a 7-week program. It's a paid training program that also includes the licensing. So we also license them and have them license them to get their commercial driver's license. This program, relatively efficient, usually with the industry, it's about a 7 to 10 week training program. Also importantly, between the written offer and the actual onboarding, we retain a lot of our employees through the process as well, because of the speed at which we take them through the process, and then also the speed at which we're able to get them started. Industry-wide, there's about a 20% drop-off between the first day worked, between an employee accepting an offer and the first day worked. For us, it's less than 5%. And that just highlights the speed of this process and the efficiency by which we're bringing folks into the authority. The fact that folks are able to show up on that first day and successfully then. So if you go to the next page, I want to talk briefly about some of the process improvements we've made on each of those steps. In 2018, we invested in an applicant tracking system. Importantly, this system is mobile friendly. It is a mobile platform. So we advertise a QR code where you can take your cell phone, hit that QR code, and then fill out the application entirely using your cell phone. We want to meet the candidates where they're at, assist them through the process, whatever way we can. And this applicant tracking system allows us to do that. It also greatly increases visibility for both the candidate and for our recruiting team as we're helping people through the process. Part of this is making it more friendly. We saw a 50% increase in applications when we put that system in place back in 2018. Off of that, we put in place an online assessment. Previously, we had an on-site assessment. There was a pencil and paper test where you had to wait several weeks before you actually had the availability to take the test. Now it's on demand. It's available on demand remotely for candidates that have successfully completed their application. There's no wait times, right? There's no scheduling issues, and we can have unlimited volume. Our retention rate improved from 41% to 71%. So we're retaining a lot more people through that step in the process. For integration, we've integrated our motor vehicle record review process. So working with 2 of our vendors, our Taleo system and our Hire Right system, and then also with the Secretary of State, we can take the applicant's information, the information about their driver's license, submit that to the Secretary of State, and then get back their driver's license or their driving record within minutes so that we can complete that review. For the applicants, this avoids a trip to the DMV. It avoids a $12 fee that they might have to pay, and it greatly speeds up the process for them. Building off of that, we put in place online scheduling of the medical assessment. The medical assessment, as I noted, this is a step later on in the phase as we begin to onboard our candidates. We give the candidates all the locations, the concentra locations where they can take this medical assessment, all the appointment times that are available. And then when the candidate fills that out, they select the location and the time where they want to take their assessment. That goes straight to Concentra, and then Concentra them reminders about their appointment to make sure that they complete that medical assessment and make it through those next steps in the process. You can go to the next page. In addition, recognizing the challenges that some of our applicants have with obtaining a commercial learner's permit and some of the studying and that's required for that, we actually built off of an existing partnership we have with Olive Harvey for our Second Chance program. So for participants in our Second Chance program, we offer them the opportunity to take a 2-week course at Olive Harvey where they get preparatory training to take their commercial learner's permit test, and then we pay for the test. So we to replicate that and make that available to our job applicants who are bus operators. So we work with Olive Harvey to open up additional classes, additional seats to provide that training. They were able to do that last year, what began as a pilot program. So for our job applicants, we're able to offer 2 weeks of CLP preparatory test training. We actually pay for the cost then of taking the test. This is a $50 out-of-pocket fee that normally the applicant would have to pay, and guide them through that process. We actually begin some of their pre-hiring work as well during that time period. So far the results, we've had 109 people participate for the program. 86% of them have completed it, and notably 72% of them have successfully become CTA employees. So we've seen a really strong success with the program. We're looking to build upon it with Olive Harvey and with City Colleges. Our next class begins June 6th. We've already been reaching out to applicants to get interested in this class, and we're looking for ways that we can evolve this program to help make sure that we can support our job applicants who need a little bit more support in getting through that commercial learner's permit test in the process. You can go to the next page. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about employee retention. So we've been talking about the top of the chart here in terms of the hires that we're bringing in. I did note that net we're positive. We've had a positive net increase in employment at the authority. I wanted to talk for a minute about employee retention. On the bottom chart here, what you see is bus operator hires and separations by month. Separations are a mix of retirements and resignations and internal transfers as well, transferring of the position. You can see then here that every month this year, we've been net positive in terms of bringing in more bus operators than we have been losing. This has resulted in now we have more bus operators in the seat than we did a year ago. So that positive impact here as we've been able to not only improve the hiring rate, but also pay attention to the bottom half of this and reduce that attrition rate. We've begun regular ongoing employee surveys, enhanced our engagement and recognition activities. I'm going to show that in a minute. And then we've not only improved our benefits, but improved the community as well. We offer a lot of great benefits. We want to make sure folks are taking advantage of them. And so not only are we focused on improving benefits, but also making sure that everyone is aware of the benefits that we offer. So if you look on the next page, one thing we heard from employees as we did the survey was we want more recognition. We have a hard job. We want more recognition for the work that we're doing. And one thing that we put in place is graduation ceremonies. This began as bus operator graduations, but we've extended it to recognize employees who are successfully completing any training program, whether it be bus operator or rail supervisor, as you see here on this page. These are monthly graduation ceremonies. The next one's actually this afternoon, but it's really a great source of excitement, not only for the new employees and some existing employees who are moving up in promotional opportunities, but also for the entire team here as well, to see a lot of the faces behind the numbers that I've been talking about earlier in the presentation. So if we go to the next page, I want to wrap up here by talking about next steps. So a lot of the investments we've made in improving the efficiency of the process to maintain applicants and speed the process have resulted in a reduced time to hire. We know that we're amongst the industry best in terms of reducing that time to hire. There are some mandated steps that do make it a little bit of a longer hiring period, and we're looking for ways in which we can continue to shave time and make it easier for our applicants. Next step that we're going to take is to create on-demand interviewing. This is a system that we've put in place here. It's a private industry best practice. Now we see this amongst other transportation providers, such as the airlines or package deliveries services, where they're offering on-demand interviewing. So similar to the assessment, when a candidate is ready to interview, we don't want them to have to negotiate with our management team and our interviewers to say, okay, what's the best date during the day that you can do this? we're offering interviewing on demand so that they can do it asynchronously, and then we can review that on the back end. We think that that's going to improve retention in the process as well. Along with integrating text messaging with our applicant tracking system. So right now it's an email-based system. All the reminders that applicants get about next steps are on email. We know that everybody's using their phone, and text messages are much more prevalent than emails, which often get lost. So we want to integrate with text messaging so that we can better communicate with each applicant, remind them about the next steps in the process, and make sure that we're opening up those lines of communication. As I mentioned before, we're looking at putting in place additional support for those that need to obtain a commercial learner's permit. We're continuing to host career fairs, not only at CTA locations, but also building off of the success we had at hosting it at a couple of other city college locations. Our next hiring event will be here on May 19th. And then we're also looking at future events at Malcolm X, which was a great partner last year for some of our hiring events as well. And then ongoing marketing, right? Using multiple channels, looking to reach people, not only through advertising on the system, but through social media, through other promotional videos that we're putting out there, trying to get folks to think about the opportunity, to see the great benefits that we have and the real opportunity to create a lasting career here at the CTA. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Will be, and you say you're ahead of schedule as far as the projection for this year. The ridership, you got the hiring, we got the employees now. How's the balance of ridership returning?
Mr. Chairman, actually, I'll be speaking to ridership as part of my report, and I can preview a little bit of it, which is it's good.
Okay.
But one other point I wanted to make about Tom's presentation, which I think is important. You heard Tom talk about all the modifications we've made to our hiring process.
Yeah.
Before we started this endeavor, it was pretty much a paper-driven, in-person process, which wasn't a real problem when I had more applicants than I had positions to fill, but clearly has required a transformational change in how we approach this. And the philosophical position that I took with Tom and his team is eliminate excuses.
Yeah.
When an applicant says that they can't do something or it takes too long to do something, I wanted that to go away. To the extent that we had any ability to change that, I wanted us to do that. And what you have seen, quite honestly, in all my years at CTA, I've never seen this kind of transformation in the hiring process like we've gone through it. In fact, I know the city and others have come to CTA to get a better understanding of how we're processing people for positions here because of all the work that we've done, and some of which, as Tom indicated, is not only best practices in the public sector, but also best practices in the private sector. And so the good news is that we've done a lot, but as Tom pointed out, there's a lot more that we can do. There's still some other barriers that we want to really focus on, particularly around the commercial license permitting process and how we can expedite some of that as we go forward. There are also some regulatory challenges that we want to talk to the federal government about, not the least of which is the minimum age to get a commercial driver's license. Currently it's 18 to get a CDL, which means that people, in many cases, students graduating from high school cannot, even if they're interested in becoming a CTA bus operator, cannot apply because they cannot get a CDL at that point in time. And so that's certainly something that I want to raise with DOT as a bigger concern, along with some of the other issues that we have around, the question as Tom indicated, we're allowed to issue driver's licenses to our employees, but we're not allowed to issue a learner permit. The rational side says, how do you get to do what really is the bigger stuff, but not the preliminary stuff, particularly as a public governmental agency. So I think there's some opportunities to do a lot more beyond what we've already done. But in the meantime, Tom and his team will continue to move forward to improve the process wherever we can, and also to get feedback from our applicants. What are we hearing? What are you hearing? In many cases, board members will raise concerns about the process and so on and so forth. And I encourage you, if you're hearing from anyone who's having an issue or has some concern about what they're doing, to let us know. We're happy to follow up. As Tom indicated, we can track every applicant through our process so we can find out where someone is, what's holding up their moving to the next step, or whether they've been contacted or not by CTA. So we have a very robust database now that really does allow us to stay on top of what's happening here. And as you can tell, the results speak for themselves. We're seeing increased numbers in terms of people getting through this process, which is resulting in increased number of bus operators on the operator side. So I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot more we can do, but we're going to continue to keep driving this because it is foundational to everything else that I'm trying to do. I can't get my service back up. I can't do the other things that we're talking about in terms of moving the quality of the service we delivered if I don't have enough employees to do that. And so we are laser focused as a team on it. And it is truly a team effort, and we'll continue to remain laser focused on this till we get back to normal.
Thank you. Good.
Are there any other questions? Director Ja?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Ortiz?
I just really want to highlight the fact of all of the streamlining that's taking place for the process. And also, I want to commend the entire team for really looking at cost that throughout the process that we're taking on so that the applicants can have the easiest and most successful process overall for them. So thank you.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
Chairman Barclay?
Just to compliment Tom and his team for doing an extraordinary job of streamlining this process and making it very efficient. I think this is a model for other government agencies, not only here in Chicago, but throughout the nation, that you guys are basically short-circuited this whole process to make jobs available to people that we need.
Chairman Miller, there are no further questions or comments.
Since there's no further business to conduct, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the May 10th, 2023 meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Georgette, can you please call the roll?
Director Ortiz?
Here.
Director Ja?
Here.
Chairman Miller?
Here.
And Director Lee, I believe, is absent. Chairman Miller, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business is approval of the March 8, 2023 committee minutes. I have a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the minutes of the March 8th, 2023 meeting be approved. We are ready to take the roll. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is a review of an ordinance approving the Authority 2019 through 2022 Title VI Program Triennial Report authorizing submittal of the Federal Transit Administration. Michael Connolly.
Actually, Teresa Fletcher Brown here.
I'm sorry.
Director. It's okay, Director. Good morning, Directors. I am Teresa Fletcher Brown, Director of EEO and Compliance Programs. I'm here presenting the Title VI Triennial Report. As a transit provider and grantee of federal funding, the CTA is required to submit a Title VI program report to the Federal Transit Administration every 3 years or as otherwise directed. Title VI prohibits a transit provider from discriminating against or denying services to customers on the basis of race, color, or national origin. The Title VI report covers the years 2019 to 2022. The FTA extended the review period to include 1 additional year due to delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Importantly, no findings or disparate impact occurred during the review period. The report, which was jointly created by the Service Planning Department and the EEO unit, includes information regarding CTA's Title VI complaint procedure, the public notice process, our service standards and policies, and the language assistance plan for limited English proficient populations in CTA service areas. The current Title VI program was previously authorized by the board in 2020 and will expire at the end of May 2023. Upon approval by the board, the updated report will be submitted to the FTA. I am joined by Mike Connolly from the Planning Department, and we are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you and welcome to the team. Thanks a lot. I have no questions at this time.
Director Ja,
No questions.
Director Ortiz,
No questions.
Director Jakes,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay,
No questions.
Director Miller, there are no questions.
May I have a motion to approve the authority of the 2019 through 2022 Title VI Triennial Report and authorizing submittal to Federal Transit Administration?
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the authority approve the 2019, that the board approve the authority's 2019 through 2022 Title VI Program Triennial Report and submit it to the Federal Transit Administration. Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes.
Chairman Miller, the motion passes.
Thank you. Since there's no further business to conduct, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee, that the meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery be adjourned. Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes.
The meeting is adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the May 10th, 2023 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Georgette, will you please call the roll?
Director Ja,
Here.
Director Ortiz,
Here.
Director Miller,
Here.
and Chairman Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Jakes, Director Jakes, Chairman Jakes, you do have a quorum.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of April 12th, 2023. May I have a motion to approve?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the committee minutes of April 12, 2023 be approved. Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion is approved. The motion is approved and passed.
Next,
We now move to agenda item number 3.
next order of business is the finance report. Jeremy Fine.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and today I'll walk through the results for March as well as year-to-date numbers. On the first page here, we have our March revenues. We continue to see a similar trend of what we've seen for the first couple of months of the year, where we see fare and pass totals coming in positive by $300,000 versus the budget. Reduced fare subsidy coming in as expected, and non-fare box totals coming in about $600,000 better than expected, which leaves us for the month of March about $900,000 of positive variance versus the budget and about $3 million better than March of 2022. On the next page, you see the year-to-date numbers with regard to system-generated revenues. Again, we have fare and pass totals coming in slightly above $4 million positive to the budget. Reduced fare subsidy coming in as expected, and non-fare box totals coming in almost $3 million better than expected, which leaves us on the first quarter of 2023, a little over $7 million better than budget and a little over $17 million better than the first quarter of 2022. On the next section, we talk about our expenses. We see here for the month of March, we have positive favorability on labor, a little over $10 million there. Materials coming in essentially at budget. Fuel is coming in a little bit better than budget, with about $1 million of favorability there. Power essentially at budget, slightly down. Injuries and damages and security services either coming in flat or slightly down. And other expenses coming in about $2.7 million better than expected, which leaves us for the month of March almost $14 million of positive variance, 13.8. And when you couple that with our revenues, we're net about $14.7 million for the month of March. On the next page, you see our year-to-date expense numbers. Again, following a similar form of what I walked through with regard to the monthly totals. So I'll drop to the bottom line here with regard to total operating expenses for the first quarter, coming in about $29.2 million favorable to the budget. When you couple that with our revenues, that leaves us about $36.3 million better than budget on a system generated revenue and expense basis. With regard to our public funding, we'll turn to the next section. And you can see here now we have received the first installment of sales tax for calendar year 2023. So we've received the January allocation, which was $2.9 million better than budget. PTF, which is regarding the April distribution, is $2.3 million better than budget. And we see the RET and the PTF on RET because of the impact of higher interest rates and the dampening effect on real estate sales. Those numbers are coming in unfavorable, about $2.3 million down to budget regarding the March allocation, and about $1 million down regarding PTF for on RET for April. So overall, monthly, public funding is about $1.9 million better than budget. On the next page, you see the year-to-date numbers. Again, only seeing 1 month of distribution for sales tax. We see about $3 million of positive variance there, a little over 7 for PTF, and $11 million down for the real estate transfer tax, and the PTF on RET about $2 million. So that leaves us year to date essentially flat on a percentage basis, but down a little under $3 million. But again, we've only received 1 month of sales tax so far for the year. We continue to keep a very keen eye on sales tax, as there's continued rumblings, as there has been for a while, with regard to weakness in the economy. But knock on wood, sales tax, at least through January, has continued to perform very strongly. On the next page, you see our federal relief funding draws for the month. We see a little over 19 million drawn against the 3 remaining grants that we have, CRISA, ARP, and ARP discretionary. We continue to keep all 3 grants active. And to date, we've drawn down a little over 45% of the total allocation, which means that we have a little over 1.2 billion remaining. So we remain on track for having these funds last through 2025 and into the early part of 2026. In the final section, we talk about the 3 commodities that we purchase, fuel, power, and natural gas. You'll notice here that we now are fully locked in for 23 and 4. For 2025, we're at 65%, and we'll report on next month an additional allocation that we were able to lock in at the latter part of last week for some remaining portion of 2025. But this strategy has worked very well for us in locking in at very low prices and also creating that budget certainty we're looking for as well. And then we'll look for selective opportunities on power and natural gas as we continue to move forward. So that concludes my report, and glad to answer any questions.
Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong. You said that last month, or I guess this year, we've drawn down 19 million from the pandemic funds.
Correct. For the month, we've drawn down about 19. That's been around the numbers that we've had of the prior months for 2023.
Okay. So if we're 1.9 million better than budget, what are you using the 19 million for?
So as part of the 23 budget, we had always assumed that there would be a gap, based on the fact that, as we, as the industry at large, continues to attract back riders, there's always been a gap expected. And that is what we're essentially drawing the additional funds for, is to close that gap. As part of the budget, we had assumed that there would be a little under $400 million gap. Again, we continue to draw down, the delta between, our overall expenses for the month as well as the revenues. And that's what we're drawing down on a monthly basis here.
Okay,
So while we,
no,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, Jeremy. No, go ahead, Jeremy.
So while we, continue to perform very well with regard to, our revenues and our expenses, it does diminish the amount that we're drawing on a monthly basis, but we still need to draw. And that underscores kind of the critical nature of the federal emergency relief funding, how important it is to try to preserve that as long as possible. Because again, we do need those funds. And it's also critical and underscores the need for, a systemic fix to this problem, with regard to our public funding as we move forward. And that's what we're continuing to work with the state, and the other transit advocates out there with regard to additional funding, because there is a gap. There's a structural gap because of where we stand in terms of, recovery from the pandemic. So again, that's why we were allotted the federal funding to start with, and why we need to have kind of a structural fix as we continue to move forward, because those funds are needed, are critical, and provide a lifeline for us as we continue to move forward.
So then, if this is going to last us to 2025, roughly, and I know you're not a fortune teller, how will the gap be filled after 2025?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and one that we've been working with the other service boards, as well as the RTA and transit advocates, and identified through the Transit is the Answer plan at the RTA. CMAP is also working on a similar type plan, but we've identified various revenue sources through that plan that could potentially be tapped into to help close that structural gap. Again, we're working with, the state, both the Senate and House committees on identifying different revenue streams. At the end of the day, we're agnostic as to the actual revenue stream. We just need the additional revenue to help continue to provide service that our constituents are really looking for and need. As we've talked about before, transit really, became clear that it's an essential service for the region. And as such, it needs to be funded accordingly. So I think that, again, the Transit is the Answer has identified several different buckets of potential funding. And we continue to make the need known to the folks in Springfield and elsewhere, as well as potential options for helping close that gap. But again, we're agnostic at the end of the day with regard to what revenue is actually associated, as long as the revenue is there.
Director, just to maybe put a finer point on what Jeremy is saying, you're asking the exact right question. What happens after 2025? And the more direct answer that we can give you is we don't know. We can tell you what we will have to do after 2025 if we're not able to get some sort of structural fix, as Jeremy has pointed out. And that is basically you're looking at draconian service cuts or huge fare increases to basically deal with the type of gap that we'll be facing. Now, there are two things that are working in parallel that we hope will help with this to some degree. One are all the measures that Jeremy pointed out, which are basically focused on revisiting the overall formula for funding transit in this region. So it's not just a CTA solution, it's a Metro PACE and CTA solution. We knew even before the pandemic hit that we had a structural problem with our operating funding for this region. It was not keeping up with the increasing costs associated with running the transit system. The pandemic exacerbated that issue tenfold. The other part of the equation that we continue to work on is what you've been hearing us talk about around ridership. The reason that Jeremy has to draw down the funding that we're taking from the emergency relief fund is because there's a gap between what our fare revenues are providing, what our existing subsidies give us, and what our actual costs are. So when Jeremy talks about a favorable budget variance, he's really comparing that to what we budgeted in terms of our cost and revenues. But the cost and revenues we budgeted always contemplated a gap between what our total costs would be and what our subsidies would be to support that. And so the emergency relief fund is actually filling that gap today. If we weren't doing that, you could take $20 million off of our budget in terms of where we would actually be in terms of what our budget would look like, because that would be the amount of money that we would be able to fill. And actually, I'm oversimplifying it because there are other implications because of fare box recovery ratios and other things about what else we could spend and what else we could use to even fill and cover the costs that we're incurring. The good news is that we have to 2025. We're not facing a tough decision this year, but we need to get moving on figuring out the long-term solution, and that's exactly the work that we're doing down in Springfield right now. There are literally conversations occurring as we speak today with the leadership and with the key members of the legislature in Springfield as well as the governor's office about what we're going to need to fix this problem, and ultimately starting to talk through what solutions will make the most sense. I should also point out at the federal level, we've also raised this issue. It is not a unique issue to CTA or this region. It is a unique issue throughout the entire industry. We're all facing a fiscal cliff. We're all facing a similar problem. The gaps may be different depending upon what size agency you have, but the impacts are the same. Whether you're a big agency like CTA or New York MTA or Boston or Philadelphia, or a small entity like Birmingham or Charlotte or anyone else, we're all facing gaps. Our ridership is not coming back as quickly as we needed to fill those gaps. So between the two strategies, we hope we have to, I said hope, we have to find a solution to fix this because the options are not pleasant. And we're certainly making that case as we speak today.
Trevor, wouldn't you say that we've had a problem for many years?
Yes.
And the pandemic sort of exacerbated, that. But the bottom line is the formula needs to be reworked for
Correct.
Public transportation, not only in this region, but throughout the nation.
Well, it needs to be reworked in this region because the operating formulas are unique to us here. Other transit agencies in other states get funded in different ways. So I'm not speaking as an industry issue around the formulas to fix it. When I talk about the industry challenge, I'm talking about the overall impact of the pandemic. So everyone's facing these types of fiscal cliffs. What their solutions are can be very different depending upon what your subsidy sources are and what the support is from one state to another. Here in Illinois, that focus is exactly right. It's on our formula, which subsidizes us, and how we can ultimately address that formula to basically provide a stable financial and funding source that will not only support our current expenses, but our expenses as they continue to grow. The other thing that's a part of that equation are issues like free fares and other things that we talk about that, as a policy matter, I have no objection to, but that require funding to support it. Because as I like to tell people, free fares aren't free. Right. We have a cost that we have to incur whether you're riding for free or whether you're paying a fare. And I need to have some way to cover that cost. And so I think as we move forward down in Springfield, you're going to be hearing a lot of conversations about not just what our formula should look like and how we're going to get funded, but also what other things people want us to do as part of the services that we provide. I actually think that's a positive conversation, and it ultimately will support the benefit of public transportation and ultimately the reason for why, public transportation accessibility is such an important part of the overall economic, engine of the city of Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. But you can't disconnect those two conversations. You got to talk about one. You got to talk about the other. And my task is to make sure that we're having both conversations at the same time and end up at the end of the day with not only a robust funding source to subsidize our operations, but also a series of policy changes that actually maybe benefit the community and our ridership and those who are most transit dependent in ways that ultimately provide them with the level of services that we want to provide.
Well, at some point, I would like to hear a briefing of progress that's being made, because it's one thing to say we're having this discussion in Springfield, in DC, but are we actually making progress so that the hammer doesn't fall?
Right.
So, I mean, I know we still have some time, but still, I'd like to know that there's steady progress being made and where we are.
No, I'm happy to do that. And that progress, as indicated, isn't just CTA, but it is RTA, it's Metra, it's PACE, it's CMAP. There actually will be some action with CMAP happening in the next month or two with regards to their recommendations for what we should be doing about this. But we can plan on giving the board a briefing and bringing in the appropriate parties to talk about what we're doing, what the plan is, what the reaction to that plan has been. As you can appreciate from a political standpoint, progress is something that's not easy to measure with the legislature. You kind of know it when it's happening type of thing, but we certainly can get you up to date on who we've been talking to, what their response has been, what the plans are, and what the status of the discussion is as it moves forward. I think the key point here is that everyone's aware of the problem and everyone's aware that there needs to be a solution. And I would say, as a broader statement, there's been a positive reception to that reality. The hard question, which is the one that we ultimately need to get an understanding to, is okay, so what's the solution? What are the funding sources that we want to pursue? What is it going to take to put those funding sources in place? Some of those may be very difficult conversations politically, depending upon what ultimately gets decided here. But as Jeremy indicated, we're somewhat agnostic around the funding sources. What we're really focused on from our perspective is that the sources, whether it's one or multiple sources, will provide a subsidy stream that we know will actually support the real cost of running a transit system in this region, and that will grow consistent with the expectations for the service that we're supposed to provide in this region going forward.
Thank you.
The floor is open for other questions. Director Miller?
I concur with Chairman Barclay, because that also give us as a board, politically who to talk to and what we can do to help. And so since this situation started prior to the pandemic, what you're saying is that we need funding beyond what they've given that's going to expire in 25.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The funding that we have in 2025 is really a stopgap fix that the federal government gave to transit systems around the country. We were fortunate to actually get a significant portion of that money, both in terms of the formula funding that was provided to us, but also in terms of discretionary grants that were given to this region and were given to CTA in particular. So we're sitting actually in relatively good shape for the next couple of years because of that. But yeah, the conversation that we're having started at the local and regional level before the pandemic hit. It has been, it's been accelerated by the pandemic, and it is now being held together by the federal funding that we received. Otherwise, we would have been having the conversation I'm saying we're having in 2025. We'd be having that conversation right now.
Thank you.
Director Ortiz?
No further questions. Thank you.
Director Ja?
No question, but I think, this is also a really great opportunity to think about alternative sources of revenue. I know that we have a ton of real estate properties around the train stations there's a way for us to figure out community engagement and something that is not always tight, like how do you create, I think that would be a really good, I'm sure you guys have thought about it.
And I'm glad you raised that because you and the chairman and others have raised questions around that. And some of the challenges around our ability to do that is really tied to what our own legal authority is to actually pursue real estate development, for lack of a better word. I certainly believe, as part of the broader conversation we're going to have around subsidies and revenue sources, that could be a part of that conversation. And it can open up, as we've discussed, the ability for CTA to be a much more active player in the community revitalization conversations that happen, particularly around our infrastructure. We currently are somewhat limited in terms of how much that we can do, but there's no reason why that can't be a part of the broader package of solutions for long-term success for the organization. If you look at other transit systems around the world, I think of Hong Kong in particular. If you've ever been to Hong Kong, their transit system is basically a real estate company that operates public transportation. The entire density around Hong Kong is focused on providing public transportation access. And if you've ever been on their system, the number of people that they carry on a daily basis is amazing. It is 2 or 3 times more than New York carries. And the whole system is efficiently laid out in a way that allows you to move very easily and seamlessly between the residential and business operations and the public transit system itself. So there are business models out there that certainly support that type of approach. In the United States, the business models are very different in terms of how public transit systems have grown and supported themselves. But there's no reason, particularly in the conversation we're having right now, that we can't put all those things on the table. And to be quite honest with you, given the challenges that may be around the traditional funding formulas that or subsidies that may exist and the political realities of what is or is not doable, those conversations may make a lot more sense in terms of a broader range of tools that we can have in our toolbox that can allow us to basically protect ourselves against the downside of some of the subsidies that we get today. You heard Jeremy talk about the real estate transfer tax, which is one of our subsidies. The problem with the real estate transfer tax is that it's a very volatile subsidy. As goes the real estate market, so goes that tax. And when they have a good month, when there's a big sale of some commercial property, we get a really nice look at our, bump in our real estate transfer tax. But if we go into a recession or some other economic downturn, that's a subsidy source that could really hurt us. And so what we want are stable subsidy sources or a combination of stable subsidy sources and other tools that we can use that can really protect us against the downside and allow us to feel confident that we're going to have the financial support to continue to provide the services that the community is asking us to do. I can tell you that CTA has never been in this position in its entire history. We have always been in a negative, operational environment, and have had to basically do more with less as a result of that. I'm hoping that in this conversation we're having now, and the pandemic, I believe, has really given us a very unique opportunity to have a real conversation about what it really takes to support a public transportation system, and hopefully get to a formula or an approach that we ultimately can all rely on going forward that will prevent us from having to worry about doomsday budget scenarios, other things that have sort of been a pattern of our history over the course of the last 75 years.
One last thing I said, we also have to bear in mind that we reduced fares during the pandemic to track the ridership back. And I'm hoping that the public is as kind to us and remembers the fact that we're able to do that. Although consumers don't give very easily, but the bottom line is that is something that we did to attract riders to come back, reduce the fares.
That's correct. And, along with a number of other things pursued over the last, year or so, which is obviously paying dividends for us because we are seeing ridership growth. And the other benefit of having this emergency relief funding is that it's allowed us to basically do that and not face some of the other economic challenges that we might face under a normal environment. But as you pointed out, that doesn't last forever. And, what I would love to be in a condition to say to you is that, the $2 billion worth of emergency relief money isn't some anomaly, but it's basically what we see in our budget on a regular basis. And it allows us to pursue the types of programs we're talking about. It allows me to offer up free fares, reduced fares to certain categories of riders and so on and so forth. Along with having a little bit of a rainy day fund for when things may go south. In a perfect world, that's what our budget would look like. In the world that we operate in, we operate on the margins. We make sure that our budget is balanced, but there isn't any extra money around to basically just go do anything that we want to do. And so, we're constantly trading off one for the other in order to basically pursue the things that we want to pursue. And it's been a question of prioritization and what we have the money to pay for. Certainly, I think that there is an appetite for a much broader discussion around those issues. There's a lot of momentum around other policy objectives that people want public transportation to provide. And I think, we can use that momentum to basically drive a conversation around the level of funding that will ultimately support these initiatives so that we are in a position to not only provide the service that we want, but to also know that we're financially stable at the same time.
So moving forward, and I understand the whole piece of hiring and, the need for employees, and you got to give a lot just to get a little. At some point, will the hiring bonus be off the table to stop to kind of help stop that bleed?
Yeah, I think, incentives, no matter what package they are intended to address a particular problem. When the problem no longer exists and you've got a pipeline that's supporting the hiring that we need, you don't necessarily need the incentives anymore to engage in that. And so, yeah, it would be my expectation that at some point in time, when we normalize our workforce and get our service back working at the efficiency that we want it to work at, that there won't be a need for the incentives. Particularly when you look at all the other things that we're trying to put in place to support our employees and to make the case for why a job at CTA is a wonderful opportunity and wonderful career for people who are looking for those opportunities. And so, yeah, we will see that at some point in time adjust accordingly, but it is something that we're keeping a very close eye on right now. And clearly, we believe that it is having an impact as we sit here today in terms of increasing and boosting the number of people that we're getting through the door and ultimately the number of people we're able to hire.
Well, then it's also about then retention, because I know retention it's not a new problem, right? Retention has always been a chronic problem.
Yeah.
So maybe the resources that you're focusing on now in terms of just getting more people through the door would probably shift and be like, how do we, because training, onboarding, hiring has a cost associated with it. So that cost, if that can be offset by reducing, so improving your retention rate.
Absolutely.
That's
right.
where your funds are going to go. But it makes sense. I mean, it's going to kind of go in that circular motion of the bleeding is here, let's stop that for now. And then once you have a good pipeline of folks coming in, then you move your resources towards more retention so you can avoid the cost up front to keep people longer.
Yeah, and as you may have heard from Tom, we're already doing work on that side. And so you're right, there is a cost to losing employees, particularly early. Historically, CTA has been one of those places where people work for 30 or 40 years and then retire. But the pandemic has had a significant impact on that. And we've had to really focus a whole lot more on what we're doing to support our employees. And those programs are not cheap. And we are going to do more of that as we continue to make sure that we're incentivizing the reason for why CTA is a good employer and a good place to work, and providing the type of benefits to our employees that ultimately, keeps them and we don't lose them to our competitors, particularly those who have commercial driver's licenses, because that is a very, very lucrative market from a recruitment standpoint. And so we have to appreciate and understand that in our overall strategies around what we're doing for our employees. So, you're right, it won't be, there is a doubt, it's, it's not dollar for dollar, but there is an investment we're making on the other side. That investment will continue, unlike the incentives that I'm talking about for hiring. Those investments will continue, will probably grow over the long term as we continue to make sure that we're holding on to the employees that we spend, as you rightly point out, a substantial amount of money to bring them on board and to put them in a position to perform these services for CTA.
Director Jakes, if there are no further questions, you can proceed to agenda item number 4.
Our next order of business is an ordinance amending ordinance 022-141, approving the fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital improvement program. Jeremy Fine.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Fine, the Chief Financial Officer, and I'm joined with the Deputy Chief Financial Officer and Comptroller, Michelle Curran, who will go through this.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Curran, Deputy CFO and Comptroller. I'm here today to present an amendment to the 2023 to 2027 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. In February, the board approved the $3.87 billion amended CIP, and we're now proposing an additional amendment based on additional known changes. First, the amendment will incorporate the final fiscal year 2023 federal formula fund allocation, which is an increase of 1.7% over the fiscal year 2022 federal appropriation, but is about $828,000 or 0.2% lower than the original RTA planning estimate. Second, to repurpose $40.8 million of prior CTA and Rebuild Illinois State Bond funds to provide funding for work on the Forest Park Blue Line branch. And third, to realign funding sources and timing of program funds for certain projects. The net increase in funding due to this amendment is $40 million, bringing the 2023 to 2027 CIP to $3.91 billion. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
I have no questions, Georgia.
Director Ja?
No questions.
Director Ortiz?
No questions at this time.
Director Miller?
No question.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Jakes?
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 5.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a university pass, the UPass program agreement for 2023 through 2028 for participating colleges, universities, and other certificate granting schools. Jeremy Fine.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and today for your consideration, I present a proposal for a new 5-year UPass contract that will be in effect from August of 2023 through the summer of 2028. The current 5-year agreement expires at the conclusion of the summer terms of 2023. Colleges and universities have experienced dramatic and unique enrollment changes since March of 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic arose. The CTA was successful in making adaptations to the UPass program to ensure its continued success. This new agreement continues the flexibility of certain UPass contract provisions put in place during and after the COVID-19 pandemic that have allowed schools to continue participation in the UPass program. Due to these changes, CTA has offered schools the flexibility of selectively enrolling students who want a UPass for a given term instead of mandatory participation required in the UPass contract. The new agreement also makes permanent provisions, permanent previous board actions on contract amendments to encourage increased participation in the program. First, tiered pricing will continue. Schools enrolling 100% of students will pay a daily reduced rate of $1 per student. Schools enrolling less than 100% of students will continue to pay the daily rate of $1.25 per student per day. And schools enrolling 90% of the students or more may apply to the CTA for a hardship exemption to be considered for the reduced rate. The second is part-time enrollment is added to the contract and is defined as any student taking over 4 credit hours per quarter or over 6 credit hours per semester. And third, students learning online are now eligible to purchase a UPass. The CTA's UPass program has been successful since its implementation over 20 years ago.
The UPass program demonstrates that participating schools recognize the value of offering discounted pass pricing to their student population. And in fact, peer transit agencies have seen the success of the program, and it has been replicated across many agencies across the country. The CTA is excited to continue this popular program, which provides low-cost fares for students and encourages them to use CTA during and after their academic careers. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have on this contract.
I have no questions, Jeremy.
The floor is open for questions. Director Ja?
No questions.
Director Ortiz?
None, thank you.
Director Miller?
No question.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing a sublease to Cruz Blanca Brewery, LLC, of a portion of property located at 120 North Racine Avenue in Chicago. Jeremy Fine.
That's Joe Harmoning, Director of Real Estate.
Joe Harmony.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Staff is recommending Transit Board authorization for a sublease to Cruz Blanca Brewery LLC for 300 square feet of office space on a month-to-month basis, located at 120 North Racine, Chicago, Illinois. Pursuant to an existing lease between the authority and Sterling Racine LLC for the first and second floors of the CTA-owned control center at 120 North Racine, Sterling Racine must obtain the board's authority for subleasing any leased space. Also pursuant to the lease, CTA may not unreasonably withhold its consent. All provisions of the lease between CTA and Sterling Racine will remain in effect. Sterling Racine will continue to be responsible for all rent, expenses under its current lease agreement with the authority, including its share of operating expenses, applicable taxes, utilities, and will continue to require indemnification of the authority and permit termination by the authority should Sterling Racine default. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Chairman, just to clarify, there is not a brewery that's going in at 120 North Racine. In case anyone was wondering.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Director Ja?
No questions.
Director Ortiz?
No, thank you.
Director Miller?
No question.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Jakes?
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next order of business is an ordinance authorizing payment of relocation expenses arising from the acquisition of property located at 401 West 111th Street in Chicago for the Red Line Extension Project. Jeremy Fine. Or this is Joe again.
Correct.
Joe.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Barclay. Joe Harmoning, Director of Real Estate. Staff is recommending Transit Board authorization of relocation expenses related to the acquisition of property located at 401 West 111th Street, Chicago, Illinois, for the Red Line Extension Project. Pursuant to a previous ordinance, the Transit Board authorized the acquisition of 401 West 111th Street, where its owner, Potter Rich LLC, owned and operated Southside Auto Services. Pursuant to the Uniform Relocation Act, staff has confirmed relocation expenses in the amount of $211,496.50 for the removal and/or relocation of equipment at Southside Auto Services. Pursuant to a previous ordinance, the Chief Infrastructure Officer, with the approval of the General Counsel, has been authorized to pay relocation expenses up to $100,000 per instance without prior board approval. Staff recommends the payment of these relocation expenses to the owner. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Joe, you said up to 100,000, we didn't need to approve. This is 200,000+. So is this, are we talking 300 and some odd thousand, or are you just giving information?
The ordinance, the enabling ordinance for this project it allows up to $100,000 in relocation expenses without prior board consent. Because this exceeds that amount, the threshold has been surpassed, and we do need to come back to the board for board authority to make the payment for relocation expenses.
Thank you, understood. No further questions, Georgette.
Director Miller,
No question.
Director Ortiz, Director Ja, Chairman Barclay.
No questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz respectively that the item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next order of business today is the review of contracts number B1 through B3, infrastructure contracts. I have no questions.
Director Ja,
No questions.
Director Ortiz, Director Miller,
No question.
Chairman Barclay.
No questions.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number H1, contract awards for safety. I have no questions.
Director Miller,
No question.
Director Ortiz, Director Ja,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay.
No questions.
Since there are no further questions on the contracts, may I have leave to place the 4 contracts on the omnibus?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja and seconded by Director Ortiz. We will now take the vote. Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Motion to place the items on the contract items on the omnibus passes.
Since there's, I'm sorry.
Director Jakes, we may proceed to agenda item number 9B.
All right, since there's no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz. Let's take the vote. Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Jakes, the vote passes. You may now proceed to committee agenda item number 9.
And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that this meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget be adjourned. Director Ja, Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
and Director Jakes.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. At this point, we are ready to start the meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. Chairman Barclay.
I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for May 10th, 2023. Georgette, please call the roll.
Director Miller.
Here.
Director Jakes.
Here.
Director Ortiz.
Here.
Director Ja. Here. Chairman Barclay.
Here.
I would like to note that Director Michelle Lee is absent today, but Chairman Barclay, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business is public comment. Georgette?
Chairman Barclay, there are no public comments for this month.
Our next item of business on the agenda is our president's report, which will be given by President Dorval Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, I'm pleased to provide you with an update regarding the ongoing progress that we are making relative to our Meeting the Moment action plan. I'm excited to share some of our most recent accomplishments and some of the more promising trends that we've identified, which I believe reflect improvement across many of our key performance indicators. As you know, we are watching our services and programs closely to determine the effectiveness of the changes we're making and the impact that our proactive management initiatives are having. For a closer examination, I'd like to begin by taking a look at our Meeting the Moment scorecard. Our service optimization continues to show progress in the right direction with lower double and triple headways on rail. Bus service delivery is close to 95%, and big gaps on buses are slightly higher at 6.6% in March, but continue to trend significantly lower than pre-optimization, which was around 12%. The gaps that I referenced a moment ago, somewhat seasonally driven, primarily by increased construction and more special events that we are now supporting, the latter of which requires us to sort of reallocate our bus operators to support the events around our regular service. Notably, our latest rail service figures continue to show improved alignment between available workforce and schedule, which results in rail service delivery reaching almost 90% of scheduled in April. Improved rail service delivery is a direct result of new operators starting in April on the red, blue, and other lines. For example, red line service delivery improved from 76% in March to 91% in April. In April, we also graduated a class of 18 new rail operators, and they are already making an impact on our rail service. We have another 2 classes of rail operators, each with 19 new operators currently in training. And the first class of those remaining will graduate during the week of June 3rd, with the second completing their training in late July. I look forward to obviously adding these additional rail operators this summer to help us maintain the momentum that we're seeing. As we improve service, we are also continuing our great work that is being done as part of our ongoing refresh and renew station improvement program, which is a key part of our action plan that contributes greatly to making our rail stations cleaner and safer, and is an important part of creating a better overall CTA travel experience for our customers. In 2023, CTA committed to repairing and revitalizing 29 stations under our Refresh and Renew, 3 of which have already been completed. That includes the Addison on the Red Line, 35th on the Red Line, and 35th on the Green Line. Those efforts are being complemented by our seasonal power washing teams, which is a separate group of personnel that are dispatched during the overnight hours and are tasked with scrubbing and power washing the service of CTA stations. You can see some pictures of the power washing teams on your monitors. This year, we've also expanded our Refresh and Renew program to include 18 additional facilities for upgrades, 12 bus turnarounds, and 6 other employee facilities. Our crews have already begun upgrading 8 of them. And I want to highlight that because this is a direct response to our employees. They have told us that they wanted to see updates to bathrooms and turnaround locations, and that's exactly what we are focusing on in our Refresh and Renew program, because we do want to basically ensure that we're meeting and addressing their comfort and safety issues as they are concerns to us. As we discussed earlier during the board meeting, these are part of the many things that we're trying to do to improve the conditions that our employees work in, and to obviously show that we care about our employees and we want to show them that to the facilities that they operate in. Our VP for Capital Construction, Steve Masheri, is going to show you a few of the before and after photos of the Refresh Renew work that we've been working on a little bit later, but we will continue to look for other ways to invest in our employees, as I indicated earlier, with these kinds of improvements, as well as other programs that we believe will benefit our employees over the long run. As I've indicated, the retention of our employees is just as critical as the hiring of new employees, and we're focusing on both of these at the same time. As you are aware, we're also working very hard to recruit, train, and onboard employees at a rate rarely if ever seen by most public transit agencies. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the stuff that Tom McComb went through, but I think you got a very good understanding of what we're doing and where things stand to date. I will reemphasize the fact that we have another career fair that's coming on May 19th. And once again, to our board of directors and to anyone else who's watching these proceedings, please spread the word. CJ is hiring for jobs with both good pay and good benefits. We also know our strategy can and will work. In fact, later this afternoon, we will be celebrating over 90 new successful trainees at a graduation ceremony here in our headquarters building. Our progress is reflected in the numbers, and we have more bus operators in service today than we did 1 year ago. And we're continuing to see our overall workforce numbers increase. As I've discussed with you earlier, our eyes remain firmly focused on the ball in terms of increasing our workforce, both in terms of new hires and better attrition. And it is my hope and expectation that this trend will portend for many good things in the future. Of course, one of the reasons why we were seeking to hire many more employees is because we are also continuing to see a return of our customers post-pandemic. As we continue to see positive progress with hiring and service reliability each month, we are also seeing positive growth in our ridership. For example, last Wednesday, we had our highest bus ridership day since the beginning of the pandemic, with 554,000 rides, 13,000 more rides than the highest day last fall. We also had our second highest week-long bus ridership totals of the pandemic last week, with 3.182 million rides, which is the highest week coming just 3 weeks prior at 3.2 million rides. Both of these weeks have beat the highest weeks that we saw from last fall. During most years, the fall season is when we tend to have our highest ridership days. So the fact that we are seeing this level of ridership during the spring is certainly a very good sign that our ridership is starting to come back. In March, CJ's combined bus and rail system ridership was up 12% versus last year. And preliminary numbers, which I will share next month, point to April being even better. CJ also reached a new high point in March with current bus ridership reaching 64% of pre-pandemic 2019 ridership. We tend to refer to this number as our ridership retention number, and we are very happy to see progress in this metric as well. Additionally, downtown ridership is showing strong growth, and as more people return to the office and other activities downtown, stations on the Loop Elevated are up 17% versus last year, and bus routes that serve only the Loop area are up 46% during the same period. We're also seeing some promising ridership growth on the Blue Line due in part to the Kennedy construction project, which is allowing us to show car commuters a both faster and more affordable way to get downtown. On the O'Hara branch, rail ridership is now up approximately 1,500 rides per day in the morning rush alone since the Kennedy construction and train frequency improvements began. While some of this ridership is due to seasonality in that we normally see increased ridership in the springtime, the normal rise in ridership when weather warms up, there are strong indications there's a corollary between the increased CJ ridership and only time will tell us this trend continues to a multi-year reconstruction project. But our initial data tends to suggest that this is not just seasonal increases, but people making decisions to ride CTA in lieu of fighting the traffic on the Kennedy right now. I would also like to share with you that we are in the process of completing our review and analysis of the results of our customer survey for the first quarter of the year, which includes feedback from both frequent and infrequent riders. While we will provide you with a more fulsome and comprehensive review of what we've learned next month, I can tell you now that we know that things are moving in the right direction. While there are and will always be areas where we need to and can improve, there are also many areas where we can plainly see that our system optimization efforts and other initiatives are starting to have an impact. I also said our post-pandemic return, and I need to keep reminding everybody of this, is more akin to a marathon than a sprint. So I'm sharing these details with you now because I think they are encouraging for CTA and demonstrates that little by little, we are seeing improvements in key service areas and we're moving the agency in the right direction. As I have been in the past months, I will continue to update you on the progress that we're making on these various data points. I'm also looking forward to sharing with you some new performance metrics that we have been working on and more transparency around the data that we share with the public about our service, what's going on with our service, and how we ultimately are addressing our service over a period of time. That preview will also happen in the next month or so. Mr. Chairman, that completes my remarks regarding our action plan and other activities that we're engaged in, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, President Carter, for the update. First of all, I'd like to say we're very pleased to see the significant progress we're making in our hiring efforts, which we discussed earlier this morning. I attended the new hire graduation last month and saw firsthand the enthusiasm and pride of the new hires joining the CTA family. Their excitement is reflective of the thought and effort the team has put into making CTA the company of choice to build a career, from the recruitment and application process through training, graduation, and eventually serving our customers. Hiring and retention are key components to addressing service and reliability issues. And I applaud the efforts made forward to continued progress. Regarding service reliability and overall customer service, while there are complex factors contributing to issues in these areas, as I mentioned in briefings, there are some ways that we can show our public the steps we're taking in the short term to address these issues. Messaging is one of those methods. Pleased to see that the team has taken the feedback from the board about proactively getting the message out about our efforts and the progress we're making along the way. I look forward to the team sharing updates on this effort. Lastly, I'd like to thank all who applied for the advisory board. As you know, that's near and dear to me. The application process closed on April 28th, and we received over 130 applications. I'm encouraged by the demonstration of our customers' engagement and interest. Applications are currently being reviewed, and we will have updates in the coming weeks, so please stay tuned for that. At this point, I'd like to open up to the rest of the board members for any comments in response to President Carter's remarks.
Well, President Carter, I want to say that you were being quite modest, because although you talked about the employees and what they needed, I know you were also responding to the public when they said the same thing. So, so you were being modest, but, I want the public to know that you heard them and your team are responding. So thank you.
Yeah, I thank you for that comment. I think it is important that I'm clear about the fact that by no stretch of the imagination we want to be. We still have challenges. Right? Our service isn't at the level we want it to be to get to normal. Working hard to improve the situation, and we have a strategy that I think is indicated by all the feedback that we're seeing that's working. It's going to get us back to where we want to be in the long term.
Any other comments from any other board member?
Say thank you for all of the hard work. It's refreshing and it's exciting that we're moving in this positive direction. Thank you and the team.
Plus one.
Thank you.
Thank you again, President Carter. Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 12, 2023. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director John, seconded by Director Ortiz, We will now take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay, the motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 12, 2023 passes.
Our next order of business is executive session. Is my understanding, Kent, that there is an executive session today?
Yes, Chairman, we will move into executive session pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C, sub 11 and 21.
I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive session for reasons stated by council.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ja, seconded by Director Ortiz. We will now take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
The motion passes.
I will now entertain a motion to return to open session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz that we return to open session. We will now take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
The vote passes.
We will now address board agenda item 5A. Kent?
Item 5A, Chairman, the board reviewed in closed session, the closed session meeting minutes from March 8th, 2023 and April 12th, 2020.
Thank you, Kent. May I have a motion to approve the closed session minutes for March 8th and April 12th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz that the minutes from the closed session meetings of March and April 2023 be approved. We will now take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 5B. Kent?
Thank you, Chairman. In executive session, we discussed the lawsuit of Marianne Stanczyk versus the Chicago Transit Authority and Tommy Hare. This lawsuit involves an accident that occurred on October 22nd, 2018, when the plaintiff was struck by a CTA bus near the intersection of Archer Avenue and Mason Avenue and sustained injuries. The parties have negotiated a tentative settlement subject to board approval. The plaintiff has indicated that she will accept in full settlement of this lawsuit the amount of $2 million.
Thank you, Kent. May I have a motion to approve a settlement in the case of Stanczyk versus Chicago Transit Authority and Tommy Hale, case number 2019L009703, in the amount of $1 million?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz that the board approve the settlement in the case of Stanczyk versus Chicago Transit Authority and Tommy Hale. Let's take the roll. Let's take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is board matters. Georgia, do we have any board matters?
No, Chairman Barclay, we have no board matters for this month.
Our next order of business, report from the Committee on Human Resources. Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met earlier this morning and reviewed May 11, 2022 committee minutes. Hiring update presentation was made by CTA Chief Administration Tom McCone, and the committee discussed presentation as question, clarification, certain additional information in adjourn, there being no further business consideration. That concludes my report, Chairman.
Thank you, Director Miller. Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning. Director Miller.
Thank you. The committee met earlier this morning and approved the March 8, 2023 committee minutes. The committee reviewed one ordinance, an ordinance approving the Authority 2019 through 2022 Title VI Triennial report and authorizing submittal to Federal Transit Administration. That concludes my report, Chairman Barclay.
Thank you, Director Miller. I will now take a motion to approve the ordinance approving the authority's 2019 through 2022 Title VI Program Triennial Report and authorizing submittal to the Federal Transit Administration.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the board approve the authority's 2019 through 2022 Title VI Program Triennial Report and authorize submittal to the Federal Transit Administration. Let's take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Jakes.
The committee met earlier this morning and approved the April 12th, 2023 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. Committee reviewed 4 ordinances. An ordinance amending Ordinance 022-141, approving the fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital improvement program. An ordinance authorizing a University Pass, or called UPass program, agreement for 2023 through 2028 with participating colleges, universities, and other certificate granting schools, and ordinance authorizing a sublease to Cruz Blanca Brewery, LLC, of a portion of property located at 120 North Racine Avenue, Chicago, an ordinance authorizing payment of relocation expenses arising from the acquisition of property located at 401 West 111th Street, Chicago, for the Red Line Extension Project. The committee also reviewed 4 contracts. The committee approved and recommended for board approval for ordinances and the 4 contracts. The committee placed the ordinance and 4 the contracts on the omnibus. That concludes my report, Chairman Barkley.
Thank you, Director Jakes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Jakes.
So moved. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz that the omnibus from the meeting from the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee be approved. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next order of business is a construction report from Grace O's, our Vice President for Purple Modernization. Steve Arishi.
That's Sherry.
Sorry, our Vice President of Capital Construction, and Juan Pablo Prieto, our Director of Diversity Programs.
Good morning, Chairman and Board of Directors. My name is Steve Masheri. I am your Vice President of Capital Construction for the CORE program. Today we'll be going through the presentation of the CORE projects, at then which point I will turn it over to Grace O's to talk about RPM. Next slide. The first project we'll be talking about is the CDOT Lakeline Damon Station, which we've been excited to talk about the progression of the work, both within the structural foundation improvements, as well as the work coming out of the ground and seeing the station start to come to shape. Next slide. This photograph here shows the contractor pouring the foundation pier caps and a couple of the bents, which is going to be a series of structural improvements that will have these new structural members supporting the track structure that is currently ongoing. Next slide. This photograph here is showing the station starting to come out of the ground and is actually showing the elevator tower being constructed right now with a series of rebar cages that are tied together and then placed inside of a formwork. Once that formwork is completed, they'll pour concrete inside the formwork, which will be the structural member of the elevator tower itself. Next slide. This photograph is showing the formwork of that elevator tower being built from the exterior. So this work is progressing quite well. Next slide. The next project we'll be talking about is the non-revenue vehicle facility at 63rd Street. We have a lot of work happening throughout the site, both inside the facility, outside the facility, and also various site work. Next slide. Here we are showing the contractors installing roof drains that will ensure weather tightness inside the facility once staff move inside, which we're expecting to have at the end of the year. Next slide. Here we're showing the contractor is doing excavation for wash pits as well as inspection pits, which will be used to do maintenance and inspection work for the vehicle facilities once the facility is ready for personnel use at the end of the year. Next slide. This is showing the contractor pouring concrete duct banks for utility work, which will be providing electrical, power, and communications at various aspects of the interior of the facility. Next slide. The next project we'll be talking about is the traction power upgrades, Barry, Damon, and Canal substations. A lot of the work has been focusing on the Damon substation, as well as the Belmont crossover, which was approved 2 months ago with the board. So we're seeing work progressing well and on several fronts here. Next slide. Here we're showing the existing track was built in the 1950s is being removed. And we've showed previous months just the kind of the level of effort that it takes to remove some of that existing track work inside the subway under a series of weekend line cuts. We've been progressing well with that work. We're expecting to have that done later this spring. Next slide. And this photo is showing the contractor bringing in the new track, which we've pre-assembled into panels, which are then put into place on the left. And then on the right, we're seeing how the new panels are then tied into the existing track work. So it's one smooth track structure for the trains to move as they move through after the end of the weekend. So we've been really happy with how that work's been progressing. Next slide. These photos are showing Damon Substation. The work is now coming, is out of the ground, and now we're starting to bolt everything, the structure together, and we're also putting together the enclosure. As you can see on the photo on the left, we actually have the roof structure going on, so work is progressing very well, while the equipment is also being fabricated. So we're very happy with the progress on this job site as well. Next slide. This is outside the construction area. This is the Refresh and Renew program that President Carter talked about. This is the start of this year's cycle, which we're excited to report on. This year, we currently are planning to address 29 stations. 3 of them have already been completed, which is Addison Red Line, as well as Sox 35th and 35th IIT and the Green Line. So we have a whole list of work that we're planning of stations to attack, which will be customer facing, as well as President Carter talked about, employee facing, where it's important for us to be able to provide investments to what we consider internal customers, and bus turnarounds as well as facilities. Next slide. I'm just going to show you a few photos of before and afters. So this is Addison Red Line outside of Wrigley Field, where we've done some repair and painting of the storefront panels at the platform level. Next slide. And on Sox 35th, we have done some minor repairs and painting of staircases, handrail repairs as well, various signage repairs and replacements, as well as checking to ensure that the lighting is in good order as well. Next slide. This is a photo of the painting of the staircases, before on the left, after on the right. You can see the improvements there. Next slide. This is some painting and some repairs that we've done at 35th on the Green Line, where we've painted all the staircases as well as various elements on the platform level. Next slide. This is showing a handful of items that we've done, not just with the cosmetic improvements, but also done some preventative maintenance for the roto gates, signage, lighting, trying to do a tip to tail on these Refresh and Renew initiatives. Next slide. In addition to doing the stations, we're also starting to do some of the bus turnarounds. This is the bus turnaround at 79th and South Shore, where you can see we've done some painting of the bollards. We've done some minor concrete replacement. We've done some polishing in the stainless steel on the exterior of the facility. Next slide. And we've also done some work on the interior. So we've done a repair and a recoating of the bathroom facility. We've cleaned up a couple of leaks. We've made sure that all the heating and lighting elements are working in proper order, so that they're safe and appropriate to use when they're needed by the employees. Next slide. I will turn it over to Grace O's.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, Chairman Barclay and directors. My name is Grace O's, and I'm the Vice President of Construction on the RPM project. Next slide, thank you. The project continues forward as we prepare for stage changes. Most notably in the corridor signal improvement portions, we are continuing our work at Winona Relay House. We have completed wiring and are starting pre-testing of the signal equipment that was arrived on site last month. In the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr portion of the project, we are continuing with track work as we move forward to our stage change later this summer. We're also making progress on the temporary stations in that area. In the red purple bypass area, the contractor is completing deck pours and getting ready to begin track work installation. We are moving towards a stage change at the end of this summer for that portion of the project. Next slide. This photo in the red purple bypass area shows some of the work I just mentioned. Here we have the final deck pour. This is the base on which the track work will be installed. We'll later see them come back and pour plinths, install plates and rail and third rail as we get ready to operate trains on this portion of the work. Next slide. Additionally, we're continuing our progress at the Clark Relay House. Last month, we showed you ComEd's work. This month, we're highlighting the HVAC installation for the new relay house, and that work is continuing. Next slide. In the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr area, we have 2 temp stations. We are getting ready to serve customers in the next phase of the project. Here we highlight the roof truss work being completed at the Bryn Mawr temp station. Next slide. And here we see work further along at the Argyle temp station. We've completed the framing and we're starting on the electrical work. We also see that stairway leading up to track level. And in the next slide, we can see the platform taking shape. So this temporary platform and platform canopy will serve customers in the next stage of the project. Next slide. Track work is continuing and nearing completion. Here we see the traction power work taking place. We see the third rail blocks, which the chairs will sit on, and then the contact rail or third rail will sit on top of those chairs. We also see the auxiliary negative return system, which will be covered by a future footwalk there in the center. So we'll have a center footwalk in between these 2 new tracks. Next slide. So I wanted to share recognition that the project received. CTA received recognition for the RPM Phase 1 project. On May 4th, the project received the Innovative Transportation Solution Award from the Women's Transportation Seminar, WTS, the Chicagoland chapter. This annual award is quite an honor, and it really highlights this transformative project. Women make up 50% of the RPM project team, and we have women leading construction, engineering, and public affairs. Next slide. Additionally, outreach is continuing. We have had weekly meetings with the 44th and the 48th Ward aldermanic offices. We've also met with several of the chambers to discuss the Open for Business campaign and provide them with updates on what that campaign can offer. We've met with 2 neighborhood groups, the Sheridan Park Neighbors and Buena Vista Condo Association, and hosted virtual Q&As with constituents. I'll also note here on April 13th, we did have a kind of a wall smashing groundbreaking on the announcement of RPM removing the embankment walls. We see President Carter taking a swing at that century-old embankment that we're going to be able to fully remove now under this. That concludes my update, and I'll hand things over to Juan Pablo for workforce diversity.
Thanks, Grace. Good morning, directors. Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs. We continue to meet with the contractor monthly to discuss DBE and workforce outreach and compliance. We're still sending out opportunities for DBEs when the prime has them, so that they're aware of the trade packages and how to submit them. Open career opportunities with both prime and their subs are sent to both of our workforce partners, the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership and Hire 360, so they can refer interested and qualified candidates to meet our workforce goals. On April 27th, we hosted another session of our Tracks to Trades program, which was developed through RPM to expose CPS students to careers in the construction industry. Speakers included Charles Freeman, General Manager of Capital Construction at CTA, and representatives from Chicago Public Schools Construction, Architecture, Manufacturing, Pre-Engineering, Transportation, or CAMPT team, Walsh Floor, 2-in-1 Contractors, a DBE firm on RPM, Atlantic Painting, another DBE firm on RPM, Job Corps, Revolution Workshop, Richard Daley College, and Trinal Inc., which is Walsh Floor's workforce consultant on RPM, also a DBE firm. We spoke to a group of juniors and a group of seniors at Simeon Career Academy High School in 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Speakers spoke about their path in the construction industry and how students could find a path for themselves. Job Corps, Revolution Workshop, and Daley College spoke about the educational opportunities and resources that they provide to prepare career seekers. We had several students network with the speakers after the presentation and hope to have sparked the interest of some of the students as they think about their future. I'm proud to say that our DBE awards continue to grow. As of April 30th, DBEs have been awarded over $239 million between the design and construction packages on RPM Phase 1. These dollars have been awarded to 89 unique DBE firms, 34 of which are new to CTA. On the workforce side, as of the end of April, 1,821 unique individuals have worked over 1.2 million labor hours and earned over $70 million. Those numbers include 393 residents of economically disadvantaged areas that have worked over 353,000 labor hours and earned over $19.8 million. That concludes my portion of the report, and now I'd like to show you the next installment in our monthly video series, in which we highlight the RPM Phase 1 project's ambitious workforce and DBE inclusion programs by featuring workers as well as DBEs participating in the project. Today, you'll hear from Marion, an electrician apprentice with Mead, one of the subcontractors building the RPM project. It is truly an honor to share these stories of Chicagoans in their own words on how CTA and RPM have improved their lives. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marion Bolden. I'm an apprentice electrician for Local 9 with the RPM project. So here at Mead, we do a plethora of things as far as the RPM project. We do third rail installation and maintenance. We do the communications for the rail to the relay houses. We do welding. We do platforms. We do junction boxes. Anything electrical involve CTA, we do it. Working with my team, it's a wonderful, crazy experience because every day we have something different to do, which I like because I don't like monotony. We have different challenges. We do our briefings and we get to learn one another, how each other work, and work around one another's differences and make everything cohesive and make it work. And that's the most beautiful thing about our team. I have 2 sons, and I try to raise them or set the proper example. Having said that, they've seen their dad always work, hardworking, and as such, they want to be like me, which is awesome, and they want to get into the trades. So now I'm put in a position to get inside Local 9 union. I'm getting in a position to get their CDL and get the requirements, there it is, to get started in their career. Not just a job, but a career. So coming from the West Side, I was raised with a great family, my mom, my dad, and I always had a home. So a dream of mine was to have my own home. Once I acquired this job, I was able to do that in my dream community. And it has been a blessing for me and my family.
Thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Juan Pablo. Any questions for Juan Pablo or comments?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I continue to be thankful for all of the efforts that are done to support DBE, including minority entities as well as women entities. I also really wanted to highlight that I appreciated the numbers for women in the project as well. I think it is an important movement and system change work that we're doing overall. I think we see the changes immediately, but I think also long-term, all of these steps make a huge difference. And so I want to continue thank you and advocate for more of this effort because I think it's really important. And then also the other piece that I wanted to highlight is both thinking about construction and professional services. We all know that on the early side of the work, there are a lot of positive impacts that we can do. And so I continue to be really thankful for those aspects as well. And throughout the process to be thinking about opportunities to enhance our work through participation and inclusion of a variety of different partners. Thank you.
Director Ortiz, you mentioned the numbers around the women in the workforce, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Grace O is a newly promoted head of the RPM project, and is obviously one of the stars in our organization. And so you may not have had a chance to meet her or see her before because usually Bill Mooney does these reports, but she is the person behind the scenes that's really driving that project now. And I'm very proud to have her as part of my team and to have her working on this project.
Thank you.
I want to say to Juan Pablo, thanks a lot. And we see the continuous progress that you all are making to the community, the RPM projects, but all you're doing with the DBEs is certainly going up, and we congratulate you and the team.
Thank you, sir.
Any further comments? Thank you to all of you. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, I do have one other update that I want to give you around a construction report that I think the board would be happy to hear about. Obviously, we focus our construction report on both RPM and the other construction projects that are going on. But I also like to give you an update on the Red Line extension. As you know, that project continues to move forward. And we have put out on the street recently our RFQ for the design construction of that contract. I'm pleased to announce that we have identified the finalists for the RFQ process. This will be the public announcement of that group. And I'm very pleased to let you know that we have 3 entities that are in the running to do this work. The first one is FH Passion, Ragnar Benson, Millhouse, and BOA. The second one is Kiewit Infrastructure Company, and the third one is Walsh, Vinci Construction, Transit Community Partners. So not only when we start these solicitations, we never have a real good sense of who ultimately is going to be interested in doing the work for us. And one of the things that we have strived for in the past is to get some sort of combination of both local and national, international recognition for this work. And I'm pleased to say that we have a mix here of both local and international. And of course, with Millhouse, we have a minority-owned firm that's in the mix here. So really good group, really good combination, and they will now move into the next phase of the procurement process where we will begin negotiations with these 3 firms and determine which one will be identified as the winning firm to do the project itself.
Thank you very much for that update.
Yeah.
And also, congratulations on the $200 million award.
Yes.
For things you might want to just put in them.
Well, hey, we were informed earlier this week. We were informed that we had won a discretionary grant from the Federal Transit Administration for $200 million for the purchase of rail cars. I think that the interesting thing was that the entire grant program was only $700 million, and we got $200 million of it. So pretty nice chunk of money that's coming to CTA that will obviously fund our ongoing efforts to replace our aging rail car fleet and to obviously improve both the quality and reliability of the rail service that we're providing to our customers.
Thank you to you and your team for that effort. Our final order of business is new business. Georgette, is there any new business?
Mr. Chairman, there is no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit meeting of May 10th, 2023?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Director Ja and Director Ortiz that the meeting be adjourned. We'll take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Director Ortiz?
Yes, and on that note, happy Mexican Mother's Day to all.
Yeah, right.
Happy Mother's Day to everyone else.
Absolutely. Director Ja?
Oh,
Yes.
oh, yeah, yes. It's not my birthday.
You ready to go? Yes.
Happy what? Let me find another happy. And Chairman Barclay
Yes.
is adjourned.